Okay, welcome back to Esoteric Duvidism. Today we'll be doing chapter 4 of Duties of the Heart, Shari bitochin, the Gate of Trust. This is absolutely one of my favorite chapters in the whole book. You know, said the first 3 chapters were more the theological underpinnings of, we're talking about the obligations upon man, the obligation to serve our Maker, the obligation to recognize that there's one Creator, the nature of the one Creator, what does it mean to be unity, the unity of God. And we went into the use of examination to understand the Creator, to understand the world, to understand our purpose in it. And then we went into the obligation to serve our Creator. And now we're going into contemporary, would be very popular in any form of Jewish literature. It would be referred to as bitochin, trust in God. So a lot of this stuff is more common and more commonly quoted. And this chapter itself is probably the single most quoted of any chapter in the whole book. And certainly, personally, many of the major decisions I've made in my life were based on the wisdom in this book. So let's jump right in. Hope people are enjoying this. And I said it's worthwhile just to have these words leave my mouth and to review the teachings myself. But, service to my Creator, service to the author of Duties of the Heart and the profound effect it had on me. That's why I'm putting this out there. And, even mentioned, the person who doesn't have sons, I'm obligated to teach my sons Torah, but I don't have sons. So, fulfill that obligation by just generic teaching. And I don't really have a venue to do that. So I'm using YouTube. So I'm just putting it out there. I hope people will come on to this and enjoy it. And, we can comment on it, put it in the discussion. So let's get started. The author says, since our previous treatises dealt with the duty to assume the service of God, I deemed proper to follow it with what is more necessary than all other things for one who serves God, placing one's trust in Him for all matters, the reason being the great benefits this yields both in religious and secular matters. The benefit in religious matters, among them peace of mind, trusting God as a servant must trust his master, because if one does not place his trust in God, he will place his trust in something else, and whoever trusts in something other than God, the Almighty will remove his providence from such a person and leave him in the hands of the one he trusted, and he will be as it is written, for my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the springs of living waters, to dig for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that do not hold water. They exchange their glory for the likeness of an ox eating grass. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord shall be his refuge. Praiseworthy is the man who made the Lord his trust, and did not turn to the haughty and those who turn to falsehood. Cursed is the man who trusts in man, who makes flesh his strength, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. If he places his trust in wisdom and tactics, physical strength and industriousness, he will toil for nothing. His strength will weaken, and his tactics will fall short of accomplishing his desires. As written, he traps the wise with their own cunning. And I returned and saw under the sun that the race does not belong to the swift, nor the battle to the mighty. Neither do the wise have bread, nor do the understanding have wealth, nor the knowledgeable favor, nor time and chance happens to them all. And young lions suffer want and are hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good. If he relies on his wealth, it will be removed from him and left to someone else, as is written, he lies down rich, but there shall be nothing to gather. He opens his eyes, and his wealth is not. Do not worry yourself to grow rich. Cease from your own understanding. Should you blink your eyes at it, it is not here, for it will make wings for itself like the eagle, and it will fly towards the heavens. So if he gathers riches, but not by right, he shall leave them in the midst of his days, and at the end he stands dishonored. Or he will be prevented from his benefit, as the wise men said, the Almighty will not give him the ability to eat from it, and it will be by him like a deposit that he guards from damages until it reaches or someone worthy of it, as is written, for to a man who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he has given an occupation to gather and to accumulate, to give to him someone worthy of it, as written, for to a man who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he has given an occupation to gather and to accumulate, to give to him someone worthy of it. It is written, for to a man who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he has given an occupation to gather and to accumulate, to give to him who is good in God's sight. This too is vanity and frustration, and he will prepare, but a righteous man will wear them, and the pure shall divide the silver. And it is possible that the money will be the cause of his destruction and ultimate downfall. Is written, there is a grievous evil that I saw under the sun, riches kept by their owner for his harm. This first point here was always very meaningful to me, that the method that the Creator uses is that if a person trusts in a lower force, the Creator will remove himself and allow the person to be left to the device of the lower force. And I've used this example countless times. I've seen it in practice, and it's really a profound theological lesson. The Kabbalah is based on this. He's deriving it from verses, but I said that this is really a profound chapter, and this one thing I've mentioned probably hundreds of times, just you trust in a lower force, the Creator will remove himself and leave you to that lower force. So let's continue. Another benefit for the one who trusts in the Almighty is that his trust will lead him to the following: to not serve other than God, to not hope in any man, nor expect from anyone, to not work to win their approval, to not flatter them, to not agree with them in what is not service of God, to not be afraid of their matters, to not be afraid of disagreeing with them, to divest himself of the cloak of their favors and free himself from the burden of expressing gratitude to them and from the obligation of paying back their favors. If he rebukes them, he will not be afraid of slighting them. He will not shy from humiliating them. He will not embellish their false ways, as the prophet wrote, but the Lord God helps me, therefore shall I not be confounded. Therefore have I set my face like a flint, and I know that I shall not be ashamed. Do not fear from them or their words. And you, son of man, fear them not, and fear not their words. Fear them not, neither shall you be intimidated by them. Another benefit: trusting God will lead one to empty his mind from the distractions of the world and to focus his heart to the matters of service of God. And he will be similar in his peace of mind, tranquility of heart, and few financial worries to the alchemist, one who knows how to transform silver to gold and copper to tin to silver through skills and procedures. And the one who trusts in God will have the following 10 advantages of the alchemist. I love these because this book was written 1,000 years ago. So 1,000 years ago, probably the wisest of all people were the alchemist. The alchemist is, you could parallel this today to the modern scientist, the person who has the most recent wisdom and the ability to use of technology. So just look at that in the comparison. We're saying the person who trusts in God has superiority over the top scientist. And here we're going to have 10 reasons. Okay, let's go right away. Number 1, the alchemist requires special materials to perform his operation, without which he cannot do anything. These materials are not found at all times and in all places, but for one who trusts in God, his sustenance is assured and can come through any means of all the means of the world. It is written, and he fed you with manna, which you knew not, neither did your fathers know, that he might make known to you that man does not live by bread alone. For at no time and in no place are the means of obtaining his livelihood withheld from him. And you know already from the story of Eliyahu and the ravens, or which the widow and the cakes and water, or the story of Avadi and the prophets, where he said, I hid among the prophets of God 100 men, 50 in each cave, and I fed them bread and water. And young lions suffer want and are hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good, and fear the Lord, his holy ones, for there is no want to those who fear him. Number 2, the alchemist must perform actions and follow procedures without which he cannot successfully complete his goals. It is even possible that the fumes and odors will cause him death, along with the long work and great effort with them day and night. But one who trusts in God is secure against mishaps, and his heart is assured against future bad things. Whatever comes to him from God, he will accept with joy and gladness, and his livelihood comes to him peacefully, quietly, and happily. It is written, "He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." Number 3, the alchemist does not trust anyone with his secret due to the fear for his life, but one who trusts God does not fear any man on account of his trust. On the contrary, it is a source of honor. As King David said, "In God I trusted, I will not fear. What can a man do to me?" The alchemist must either prepare one large quantity of gold and silver for long-term needs, or prepare small batches for short-term needs. If he prepares large quantity, all his days will fear for his life that perhaps all the gold and silver will be lost in any number of ways, and his heart will never be quiet, nor his mind be at peace due to fear of the king and the people. If he makes small batches for short-term use, it's possible that he will not successfully perform the procedure at a time of great need due to failure in one of the means. But one who trusts in God has strong peace of mind that God will provide for him anytime he wishes and in any place, just like he sustains the fetus in his mother's womb, or the chick inside an egg, which has no opening to enter anything from the outside, and birds in the air, fish in the sea, and the tiny ant despite his weakness, while the mighty lion some days cannot obtain food. It is written, "Young lions suffer want and are hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good." And the Lord will not starve the souls of the righteous, and I have been young and now I'm old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. Number 5, the alchemist is under anxiety and fear of everyone, from the greatest to the lowest of people, as a consequence of his work. But one who trusts in God will be revered by great men and honorable people. Even animals and stones seek to do his will. It is written in the entire psalm, "He who sits and in 6 troubles he will save you, and in the 7th no harm will touch you," until the end of the matter. Number 6, the alchemist is not immune from sickness and disease, which hinders his joy in being wealthy and prevents him from benefiting from what he has and enjoying what he has acquired. But one who trusts in God is immune from sickness and disease, except as an atonement or to increase his reward. As written, "Now youth shall become tired and weary, and young men shall stumble. Those who hope in God will renew strength, and for the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord supports the righteous." Number 7, it is possible that the alchemist will not be able to buy food with his gold and silver due to no food being available in the city at the times. It is written, "They shall cast their money in the streets, and neither silver nor gold will be able to save them." But for one who trusts in God, his sustenance will not be blocked at any time or in any place. It is written, "In famine he redeemed you from death." And the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. And you will not be shamed in time of calamity, and in the days of famine they shall still be satisfied. Number 8, the alchemist does not linger in one place too long due to fear that his secret will be discovered, but one who trusts in God feels secure in his land and has peace of mind in his place. It is written, "Trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and be nourished by faith, and the righteous shall inherit the land and dwell forever in it." Number 9, the alchemist's skills will not accompany him in the afterlife. They may only provide him in this world security from poverty and needing other people, but one who trusts in God, whose reward and trust will accompany him in this world and in the next. It is written, "Many are the pains of the wicked, but one who trusts in God will be surrounded by kindness. And how great is your goodness that you hid away for those who fear you." Number 10, if the alchemist's work is discovered, it will become a cause for his death, because his work runs contrary to the natural order, and the director of the world will allow someone to kill him when he fails to hide his secret. But for one who trusts in God, when his trust becomes known, he will be held in high esteem and honored by the public. They will feel blessed to be near him or to see him, and his presence will bring good fortune to the city and the shield to the people from troubles. It is written, "The righteous man is the foundation of the world," similar to Lot and Zoar. And the benefits of trusting in God regarding religious matters. As I say, these come from 1,000 years ago, so we're talking about the alchemist, but really all these could be worked to the scientist, to the businessman. This is really just great foundational stuff. We're still in the introduction. Among the benefits of trusting in God regarding religious matters, one who trusts in God, if he has wealth, will be quick to fulfill his monetary obligations to God and to men with a willing and generous spirit. If he does not have wealth, he will consider that lack of wealth to be among the favors of God to him, because he is exempt from the monetary obligations to God and men which wealth brings. And if he is spared from the mental distraction of protecting and managing it, as one of the pious used to say, "My God, save me from dispersion of mind," they would ask him what dispersion of the mind. He would answer, to own property at the head of every river and at the center of every town. And this is what our sages referred to in saying, the more possessions, the more worry. And they say, who is wealthy, he who is content with what he has. One who trusts in God will receive the benefits of money, namely his material needs, but without the mental distraction and constant worry of the wealthy. The wise man said, the sleep of the laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the safety of the rich does not allow him to sleep. Another benefit, one who trusts in God will not diminish his trust on account of having much wealth, because he does not rely on the money. He regards it as a deposit which he has ordered to use in specific ways for specific matters and for a limited time. If he stays wealthy for a long time, he will not become arrogant due to his wealth. He will not remind the poor person of his charity gift, since he was commanded to give it, and he will not seek his gratitude and praises. Rather, he will thank his Creator who appointed him as a means for doing good to the poor person. If his wealth is lost, he will not worry nor mourn his loss. Rather, he will thank his Creator for taking back his deposit, just as he thanked God when it was given to him. He will be happy with his portion. He will not seek to damage others. He will not covet other people's wealth. As the wise man said, a righteous man eats to sate his appetite, but the stomach of the wicked shall forever want. Benefits of trust in God for worldly matter include peace of mind from the worries of the world, peace from the frenzy and drive to pursue the lust of the world, feeling calm, secure, at peace in the world. It is written, blessed be the man who trusts in God, and God shall be his refuge. And for he shall be like a tree planted in the water that sends out its root by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves stay green. It has no worries in a year of drought. It never fails to bear fruit. Among them, peace of mind from the need to travel to faraway journeys, which weakens the body and hastens aging. As written, my strength is weakened from the journey, my life shortened. It is said about a novice ascetic who traveled to a distant land in search of a livelihood. He met one of the idolaters of the city where he arrived, and he said to him, how completely blind and ignorant you are to worship idols. The idol worshiper asked him, and what do you worship? The ascetic answered, I worship the Creator, the omnipotent, the sustainer of all, the one, the provider of all, which there is none like him. The idolater countered, your actions contradict your words. The ascetic said, how so? The idolater said, if what you say is true, he would have provided a livelihood for you in your own city, just like he provided for you here, and it would not have been necessary for you to trouble yourself to travel to a faraway land like this. The ascetic, unable to answer, returned to his city and resumed his asceticism from that time on, and never again left his city. I remember that parable, and said many of these wisdom in this chapter I've lived by my whole life, and helped me make serious decisions. Like, for example, staying in Detroit, this parable. Another benefit, peace of mind and body, due to sparing oneself from pursuing grueling jobs and wearing occupations, avoiding work of kings, mingling in the culture, and dealing with their corrupt servants. But one who trusts God selects among the different occupations one which is easy on his body, allows him to earn a good reputation, does not consume his mind, and is best suited for his Torah obligations and the principles of his faith, because the choice of occupation will neither increase nor decrease the income he will earn unless God decreed so. As it is said, for it is not from the east nor from the west, neither from the desert does elevation come, but God judges, he lowers this one and elevates that one. And he causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me besides the still waters. Another benefit, minimal aggravation in one's business dealings. If one's merchandise does not sell, or one is unable to collect his debts, or he is struck by illness because he knows that the Creator is in charge of his life and knows best what is good for him, as written, only to God should you hope, my soul, for my hope is from him. Another benefit, joy in whatever happens to him, even if it is something difficult and against his nature, because he trusts that God will do only what is good for him in all matters, just like a mother has compassion on her baby and washing it, despairing it, and harnessing or unharnessing it against its will. And David said, surely I've behaved and quieted myself as a child. that is weaned off his mother. My soul is even as a weaned child. Since I've classified the benefits of trust for the religious and secular matters, I will now classify 7 topics on the matter of trust. Number 1, what is trust? Number 2, the criteria for trusting someone. Number 3, the prerequisites to trusting in God. Number 4, when trust applies and when it does not apply. Number 5, difference between one who trusts in God and earning a livelihood and one who does not. Number 6, obligations to refute those who promote delaying the service of God until reaching sufficient material prosperity. Number 7, things that damage one's trust in God, and a summary of the matter of trust. Chapter 1. What is trust? Peace of mind of the one who trusts. The one relies in his heart that the one he trusts in will do what is good and proper for him of the matter he is trusted with him according to his ability and his understanding of what will further his good. But the main factor which leads one to trust in the one trusted, and without which trust cannot exist, is for one's heart to be confident that the one trusted will keep his word and will do what is pledged, and that he will also think to do what is good for him, even on what he did not pledge, out of pure generosity and kindness. Chapter 2. Criteria for trusting someone. There are 7 factors which make it possible for one to trust in another being. Number 1, compassion, pity, and love. When a man knows that his friend has compassion and pity for him, he will trust in him and be at peace with regard to troubling him with all his matters. Number 2, to know that his friends, besides loving him, is not forgetful or lazy in taking care of his needs. Rather, he knows that his friend is active and resolved to do it, because if all of this is not clear, one's trust in him will not be complete, since one knows of his forgetfulness and laziness in tending his needs. But when one he trusts combines these 2 traits, great compassion for him and full attendance to his matters, he will trust in him without a doubt. Number 3, he is strong. He will not be defeated in whatever he desires, and nothing can prevent him from doing the request of the one who trusts him. Because if he is weak, one cannot fully trust in him, even though it is clear that he is compassionate and active due to the many occasions in which he failed doing things. When one combines these traits, trusting in him will be more fitting. Number 4, that the one he trusts knows what is beneficial to him, but for his inner and outer life, and also that none of the ways which benefit him or further his welfare are hidden to him. Because if he does not know all of this, one will not be at peace in entrusting himself to him. But if he combines the knowledge of the ways which are beneficial to him, the ability to implement them, great attendance to them, and compassion for him, his trust will certainly be strengthened. Number 5, that the one he trusts in is under the exclusive care of him from the beginning of his existence, in development, babyhood, childhood, youth, and adulthood, old age, until the end of his days. And when all this is clear to the truster, he's obligated to be at peace on his friend and to rely on him because of the many past benefits he already received from his friend and the constant favors he still presently receives, and this will obligate strengthening one's trust in him. Number 6, all matters of the truster are entirely in the hands of the one he trusts, and no one else can hurt him, help him, benefit, or protect him from harm, as a slave chained down in prison is entirely in the hands of his master. If the truster were in the hands of the one he trusts in this manner, it would be more fitting to trust in him. Number 7, that the person he trusts is absolutely generous and kind to those deserving and to those who are not deserving, and that his generosity and kindness is continuous, never-ending, and without interruption. Whoever combines these traits in addition to all of the previous traits has completed all the conditions that deserve trust, and would obligate the person who knows this to trust in him to be at peace internally and externally, in his heart and in his limbs, and to give himself up to him and accepts his decrees and judge him favorably in all his judgments and actions. When we investigate these 7 conditions, we will not find them at all in the created beings, but we will find them all in the Creator. He is compassionate to his creations, as written, the Lord is merciful and gracious, and now shall I take pity on Nineveh, a great city. And that he never neglects us, it is written, behold, the garden of Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. That he is all wise and invincible is written, he is wise in the heart and mighty in strength, who hardened his heart against him and remained unhurt. And yours, Lord, are the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. And the Lord your God is in your midst, the mighty one who will save you. And then he alone is the one who guides a person from the beginning of his existence and development, is written, is he not your Father who has acquired you? He made you and established you, and by you I have been upheld from birth. You are he that took me out of my mother's wombs, and did you not pour me out like milk and curdle me like cheese, and the rest of the matter? That one benefits or harms is not in the hand of the people, but rather only in the hands of the Creator, is written, who has commanded, and it came to pass, unless the Lord ordained it. Out of the mouth of God, evil and good do not go out, and all flesh is like grass, and their kindness is as the flower of the field. The grass shall not dry out, the flower shall wilt, but the word of our God shall stand forever. And surely the people are like grass, and we have already explained this sufficiently in the third gate of this book. That his generosity is universal, and his kindness is all-embracing. It is written, the Lord is good to all, and his mercies are all his works. And who gives food to all flesh, for his kindness endures forever, and you open your hand and satisfy every living thing. But really, the intellect infer these seven conditions exist in the Creator and not the created beings, and therefore I've brought these verses from Scripture only as a remembrance. When one clarifies to himself in his recognition in the true kindness of the Creator will be strong, he will place his trust in him, give himself up completely, and leave the guidance of life to him, never suspect him in his judgments, nor be upset by what he can choose for him. As David said, I will lift up the cup of salvation and call upon the name of God, and I found trouble and sorrow and call upon the name of the Lord. Chapter 3. Yeah, so in the previous chapters, we saw there's one God. We could look into the world and use the power of examination to see this, and that we should serve this Creator. And now we're coming with the same use of the intellect and examination to look at the trait of trust, and we should put our full trust in the Creator. Saying there's no being. We're going to examine, how we trust our fellow man and put trust in things. What's the character of trust? And say the real trust is trust in God. Chapter 3, the preliminaries of trusting in God. The introductions, which must be clearly understood, and the truth of which must be realized in order that a person's trust in God will be complete, are 5. First, introduction to bring complete trust. To believe and clearly understand that all the 7 factors which, when combined, make it possible to trust in someone apply to God. I've already mentioned them and commented on them from verses that occurred to me. The 7 factors as they apply to God. 1, the Creator is merciful on a man more than any other merciful being. And all mercy and compassion that a man is shown from anyone besides God is really derived from God's mercy and compassion. As the verse said, he will give you compassion and cause others to have compassion on you and multiply you. 2, none of the ways which benefit a man are unknown to the Creator. Logic necessitates this, since a man is one of his handiworks. No one can know better than man's maker the way to further his making, and the ways of loss and possible damages which could incur, and the ways it can become sick and healed. And this is also true for human makers, although they do not really create anything new, but rather merely make a new thing from existing raw materials, since to create a new form from nothing is impossible to man. And all the more so, he is called into existence from nothing, the basic elements of man, his form, his anatomy, and the order of his synthesis. Obviously, he is the wise one who undoubtedly knows which matters benefit or harm man in this world and in the next. As written, I am the Lord your God, who teaches you for your benefit, who guides you in the proper path. And also God rebukes the one he loves, and like a father to a son, he desires it. 3, the Creator is the strongest of all the strong. His word reigns supreme, and nothing can reverse his decree. As written, whatever God wants, he does. And so shall my word that goes out of my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, unless it has done what I desire. 4, he watches over and directs the lives of all men. He does not abandon any of them, nor neglects any of them. None of their matters, small or great, are hidden from him, and no matter can distract him from remembering another matter, as is written. Why should you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way has been hidden from the Lord, and my judgment is passed over from my God? And do you not know, if you have not heard, an everlasting God is the Lord, the Creator of the ends of the world? He neither tires nor wearies. There is no fathoming his understanding. 5. No created being can benefit or harm either itself or any creature without the permission of the Creator. If a slave has more than one master, and each one has the power to help him, it is not possible for him to put his trust in only one of them, since he hopes to benefit from each master. If one master can benefit him more than the others, he should trust proportionally more in him, even though he trusts in the others. And if only one of the masters can benefit him or harm him, certainly he should put his trust only in that master, since he does not hope for benefit from the other masters. Similarly, when a human being will realize that no created being can benefit or harm him without the permission of the Creator, he will stop being afraid of them and hoping for anything from them, and he will place his trust in the Creator alone, as written, "Put not your trust in princes, nor in the mortal man who has no help." 6. That one is conscious of God's abundant goodness to man, and how he brought him into existence out of abundant and pure benevolence and kindness, without man being worthy of this, nor because God has any need for him, but only out of generosity, benevolence, and goodness, as we explained in the Gate Examination in this book. And like King David said, "Many, O Lord, my God, are your wondrous works, which you have done, and your thoughts which are towards us. They cannot be reckoned up in order to you. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered." 7. That one clearly realizes that all living things in this world, whether purposeful or accidental, have predetermined limits which cannot be increased or decreased from which the Creator has decreed, whether in that amount, quantity, time, or place. It cannot be numerous if the Creator decreed it few, nor few if the Creator deemed it numerous, nor come late if decreed to come early, nor come early if decreed to come late. And if something appears to be contrary to this, really it was already pre-decreed with foresight, only that all decrees causes and means, which in turn have causes and means. One who does not understand the matters of this world thinks of an intermediate cause which forces a change in the matter, which in turn causes more changes. But really, a single cause is too weak to force a change by itself. As we see, 1 grain of wheat can cause 300 ears of wheat to grow, which each contain 30 grains. So 1 grain would have produced around 10,000 grains. Can one hide the fact that 1 grain by itself is incapable of producing this amount? And likewise, for other grains that one plants, and likewise, which we could say for man or animal, from a drop of seed, or a huge fish from a tiny egg. To busy oneself in trying to bring early what the Creator decreed would come later, or to delay that which was decreed to come early, or to try to make numerous that was decreed to be few, or to diminish what was decreed to be numerous in worldly possessions, unless it causes strengthening of his service or accepting his Torah. All this due to the weakness in the recognition of God's all-knowing understanding, and foolishness in failing to understand the benevolent character of God's conduct. The wise man has already hinted this when he says, "Everything has a time and a moment under the heaven." And also, afterwards, he mentions 28 matters, as he says, a time to be born, a time to die, until a time for war, a time for peace, and also a time for fate will overcome them all. And then he said, "If you see the oppressor, the poor, and the deprivation of justice and righteousness in the province, wonder not about the matter, for the highest over the high watches over them, and there are higher ones over them." The ways of judgment of the Creator are too deep, hidden, and lofty for us to understand even part of them, and all the more so to understand their general principles. As the verse already says, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Second introduction to bring complete trust. So we went over the 7 matters of the nature of trust, and we showed that those matters really apply and should be exclusive to the Creator of the whole world. Number 2, to know and clearly realize that the Creator is watching him, and neither one's private or public conduct is hidden from him, nor his innermost being or outer appearance. He also knows whether a man's trust in him is with a sincere heart or not. As the verse said, God knows the thoughts of the heart, that they are vain. And does he not test the heart and understand it? And you alone know the hearts of all men. When this is clearly realized by the one who trusts, it is not proper for him to claim with his lips that he trusts in God without trusting in him in his heart and thoughts, whereby he would be in the category of he of whom the verse says, with their mouths and lips they honor me, but their hearts are far from me. Third introduction to bring complete trust. That a person trusts in God alone for the things he is obligated to trust in, and not associate him with anyone else by trusting in him and one of the created beings, because that his trust in God will be invalidated in that he associated something else with God. You know what was said about Asa, despite all of his piety, when he relied on the doctors, is written during his illness, he did not seek help from God, but only in the doctors. And he was punished for this, as the verse said, blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, and the Lord will be his refuge. It is known that one who entrusts two or more men to do a task, the matter spoils, all the more so for one trust in God and man, for his trust in God will be ruined. Furthermore, this will be the strongest factor for denying him the object of his trust, is written, cursed is the man who trusts in men and turns his heart away from God. Fourth introduction. The one is very careful and makes a great effort to fulfill what the Creator required of him in his service, to do his mitzvahs and guard oneself from what he is forbidden, just like he seeks that the Creator agrees to do with him in that which he trusts him. As our sages said, make his will your will, so that he will make your will his will, nullify your will to his will, so that he will nullify the will of others to your will. And the verse says, trust in the Lord and do good, so shall you dwell in the land, and verily you shall be fed. And God is good to those who hope in him, the one who seeks him. But if one trusts in God and rebels against him, how foolish is he? How weak is his intellect and his understanding? For he can see in the world that if the employer appoints a man to do something or refrain from doing something, that the man disobeys the instruction, this will be the strongest factor in the employer refusing to fill his side of the deal. All the more so for one who disobeys the commandments of God, for which God himself testified that one who trusts in him and disobeys him will have his hopes foiled, and his trust will be considered hypocritical. Rather, he will be like one who is written, for what is the hope of the flatterer who deceives when God casts off his soul? Will God listen to his cry when trouble comes him? And will you steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, offer up to idols, and follow other gods that you know not? And will you come and stand before me in this house upon which my name is called, and you will say, we are saved? In order to commit all these abominations, has this house upon which my name is called become a den of thieves in your eyes? I too, behold, I have seen it, says the Lord. Fifth introduction. A person should realize that every new thing that happens in this world after Genesis is completed in two ways. First, by God's decree and his will that the matter should come into existence. Second, through intermediary causes and means, some near, some remote, some apparent, some hidden, all of which rush to bring into existence what was decreed, doing so with God's help. An illustration of the causes. Consider the act of drawing up water from the depths of the earth using a wheel system to which buckets are attached and which raises the water from the well. The buckets are the near cause. The remote cause is the man who harnessed an animal to the wheel and compels the animal to move in order to raise the water from the bottom of the well to the surface of the earth. The intermediary means between the man and the buckets are the animal, the mechanical contraption of interconnected wheels, gears, which turn each other in series, and the rope. If a mishap were to occur, any one of the causes mentioned, the intended purpose for which they were designed would not be accomplished. And so it is for other things which come to existence. They cannot be produced by man or anything else, but rather through the decree of God, and is preparing all the means through which the thing will be produced, as written, and by him causes are counted, and who is great in counsel and mighty in carrying it out, and it was a cause from God. And if the means are blocked, none of the actions which normally bring this matter into existence will succeed. When we examine the need for a man to pursue means and exert himself to complete his needs, we can see with our eyes that one who needs food and proper food is served before him. If he does not exert himself to eat it by lifting the food to his mouth, chewing it, he will not break his hunger. Likewise, for someone thirsty who needs water, all the more so if he has no food prepared until he needs to exert himself through milling flour, kneading, baking. And the more so if he needs to buy the food and prepare it, and even more so if he has no money to buy them and will need even greater exertion to pursue means to earn the money or to sell the amount he needs from the objects he uses in his other possessions or the like. Why man must work for a livelihood? There are two reasons why the Creator obligated a man to pursue means and exert himself for livelihood and other needs. 1. Divine wisdom required that the testing of man in the service of God or rebelling against him. Therefore, God tests man with what demonstrates his choice in the needs and lacking for external things such as food, drink, clothing, shelter, and marital relations. God commanded man to pursue and attain them through the available means in specific ways and at specific times. What God has decreed that man will attain of them, man will attain fully after the completion of the preparatory means. That which has not been decreed that he will attain, he will not attain, and the necessary means will be withheld. Through this process, his free choice of whether he served God or rebelled against him will be demonstrated through his intention and choice, and the man will then deserve either reward or punishment, regardless of whether or not he actually achieved his intentions. Secondly, if a man were not forced to exert himself in seeking a livelihood, he would kick and chase after sin. He would ignore his debt and gratitude to God for the goodness to him, as written, after the harp and the lyre, the timbrel and the fruit, the wine, and their feast, but they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the work of his hands. But Yeshua grew fat and kicked. You have grown fat, you are grown thick, you are covered with fatness. Then he forsook God who made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvations. And the sages says, it is good to study the Torah of working for a livelihood, because the toil in both removes thoughts of sin. In all Torah study without work will end in abandonment and bring to sin. And all the more so for one who has no share in either Torah or work, nor directs his attention to any of these pursuits. It was out of compassion for man that God has compelled him to be occupied with matters of this world and the next for all his days, and so that he does not seek that which he does not need and which he cannot understand with his limited intellect. Such are the matters of what was before the creation and the final ends. As the wise man said, also the toil of the world he has set into their hearts, so that man should not seek the deed which God did from beginning to end. When God removes the burden of earning a livelihood of man, very deep, powerful stuff. These are really just fundamental things, like why do we have to work? Why do we have to busy ourselves with toil? And it comes down to the nature of trust in our Creator. So very fundamental stuff. When God removes the burden of earning a livelihood from man, if a man strengthens himself in the service of God, resolves to fear him, trust in him for his religious and secular matters, steers away from reprehensible things, strives for the good character traits, does not rebel in prosperity, nor turn towards leisure, is not enticed by the evil inclination, nor seduced by the witchery of this world, the burden of exerting himself in the means to a livelihood will be removed from him. Since the two reasons mentioned above no longer apply to him, namely to test him on his choice and to protect him from rebelling during prosperity, his livelihood will come to him without strain or toil, according to his needs, as written, God will not bring hunger to the righteous. If one asks, behold, we see some righteous people which do not receive their livelihood except after hard work and strenuous toil, which many transgressors are at ease, living a good life, pleasant life, we will say the prophets and the pious, the Chassidim, already investigated this matter. One of them said, righteous are you, Lord, when I pleaded with you, you let me talk with you of your judgments. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why are all the happy that deal with very treacherously? And another, why do you show me iniquity and look upon mischief, and plunder and violence are before me, and the one who bears quarrel and strife endures? And for a wicked man surrounds the righteous, therefore justice emerged perverted. And why should you be silent when a wicked man swallows up one more righteous than he? And another, behold these wicked, yet they are tranquil in the world, having increased wealth. But for naught I cleanse my heart and bathe my hands with cleanliness. And another said, and now We praise the bold transgressors. Those who work wickedness are built up. They tempt God, and they have nevertheless escaped, and many more like this. But the prophet refrained from giving an answer because each specific case has its own particular reason. Therefore, Moses, our master, commented on this in the Torah: the hidden things belong to God. And the wise man said in connection to this, if you see the oppression of the poor and the perverting of justice and righteousness in a province, marvel not at the matter. And the verse says, the rock, his deeds are perfect, and all his ways are justice. Why the righteous sometimes suffer. So this is sometimes referred to as the Epicurean trilemma, with how is it that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all good, but yet evil still happens, bad things still happen. And it's the deepest, most profound question. Really, there's no answer that we could understand in our limited form, but the author is going to nonetheless give some answers to why the righteous sometimes suffer, which I've noted in different things that really Descartes and his development of calculus is a form of trying to understand this Epicurean trilemma of how the spiritual forces interact in the world. And this is presumably one of the greatest of all the theological questions. Most people who reject God based on the suffering of the righteous. So let's see what the author has to say. Why the righteous sometimes suffer. Nevertheless, I saw fitting to attempt to clarify this matter that should be to some extent satisfactory. The possible reasons why a righteous is prevented from attaining his livelihood without effort and must instead exert himself for it and be tested are as follows. 1. A previous sin for which it is necessary to pay him for it, as written, the righteous will pay in the land. 2. In the way of exchanging to pay him more good in the world to come, as written, to benefit you in your end. 3. To demonstrate his good bearing and good acceptance of suffering in the service of God, so that others will learn from him, as you know in the matter of Job. 4. Due to the wickedness of his generation, God tests him with poverty, hardship, or sickness to demonstrate, contrast his piety and service to God. Unlike them, it is written, indeed, he bore our illness and our pains, he carried them. 5. Due to his not being sufficiently zealous in standing up for God and exacting justice for men of his generation, as you know from the story of Eli and his sons, the verse says, and it will be that everyone who left your house will come to prostrate himself before me for a silver piece and a morsel of bread. So, just quick 5 possible reasons why the righteous have difficult times. You're saying we should accept God, we should surrender to God, we should serve God, we should love God, we should trust in God, even though it may appear sometimes that the result of that trust is skewed. And now we're the opposite, why the righteous sometimes suffer, and now why the wicked sometimes prosper. Sometimes God sends good to the wicked for the following reasons. A previous good deed he did to pay him this world is written, he repays those he hates to their face to destroy them, which Unclus renders, he pays those he hates for their good deeds during their lives to destroy them. As a temporary deposit, until God gives him a righteous son who is worthy of it, as is written, he prepares, but the tzaddik will wear it. And to the sinner he has given a preoccupation to gather and to accumulate, to give to him who is good in sight. Pretty deep, saying that the wicked person is really gathering up the wealth, and that wealth will eventually be distributed to the righteous and is just temporarily in the hands of the wicked. Number 3, sometimes the money is his chief cause of evil or death. It is written, there is a grievous evil that I saw under the sun, riches kept by their owner for his harm. Say that sometimes material benefit is really no benefit. The pains and sadness of the rich is more than the pains and sadness of the poor. The pains of having grass is greener on the other side. Number 4, sometimes it is give him time to repent and become worthy of it, as you know in the story of Manasseh, that it could be the person gathered wealth in their wickedness, but eventually will repent and will use the wealth in a righteous way. 5, his father did good, and it's fitting for him to benefit in the merit of his father. It is said to Yehu ben Nimshi, for 4 generations of your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel. And he who walks innocently is righteous. Fortunate are his sons after him. And I was young and I have aged, and have not seen a righteous man forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread. We know in the second commandment that God punishes the wicked for 3 and 4 generations, but rewards the righteous for 1,000 generations. So it could be a person's being rewarded for the deeds of their ancestors. 6, sometimes it is test those who are deceptive or have an evil interior. When they see the wicked prosper, they quickly stray from the service of God and hasten to win the favor of the wicked and to learn from their actions. In this way, it will be clarified to pure men of God, and it will be demonstrated who was faithful to God and bearing at a time when the wicked rule and persecute him. He will receive reward from the Creator for this, and you will know the story of Elihu and Isabel, or Yirmiyahu and the kings of his generation. Really powerful stuff. You're saying it could be the righteous, the wicked are prospering just to test us. Saying, how could it be that I'm trying my best to be a good person, to follow the righteous path, to serve God, and there's these wicked people who are doing horrible things, and yet they're prospering. And it's saying that's a way of God testing our resolve. Are we in it for the reward, or are we in it for the truth? And when we see the wicked prospering, are we going to say, forget this and follow the path of the wicked? As I said, that's why I'm reviewing this. That's why I'm saying this over. This is some of the most essential wisdom you could ever hear. Choice of occupation. Citizen has clarified the obligation for a man to pursue the means for livelihood. Now we can clarify that not every man is required to pursue every possible means. The possible means are numerous. Such occupations are easy, requiring little strain, such as keeping or light work, such as shopkeeping or light work with the hands, such as sewing, writing, contracting business, hiring sharecroppers or workers, supervisors. Some occupations require hard labor, such as tanning, mining, iron, or copper, smelting metals, heavy transport, constant travel to faraway places, working and plowing land, or the like. For one who is physically strong and intellectually weak, it is fitting to choose an occupation among them that require physical exertion according to what he can bear. He who is physically weak but intellectually strong should not seek among those which tire the body, but should instead tend to those who are light on the body and that he will be able to sustain. Every man has a preference for a particular work or a business over others. God has already implanted in his nature a love and fondness for it, as he implanted in a cat's nature the hunting of mice, and the falcon the hunting of small birds, and deer to trap snakes. Some birds hunt only fish, and likewise each animal species has a liking and desire for particular plants or animals, which God has implanted to by the means for its sustenance, and the structure of its body and limbs is suited for that thing. The long bill and legs of a fish-catching bird, and the strong teeth and claws of a lion, horns of an ox and ram, while the animals whose sustenance is from plant do not have the tools to hunt and kill. Similarly, you will find among human beings character traits and body structure suited for certain businesses and activities. One who finds his nature and personality attracted to a certain occupation and his body is suited for it, that he will be able to bear its demands, he should pursue it and make it his means of earning a livelihood. He should bear its pleasures and pains and not be upset when sometimes his income is withheld. Rather, let his trust in God that he will support him in all his days. Intentions when working for a livelihood. And he should have intentions when his mind and body is occupied with one of the means of earning a living, to fulfill the commandment of the Creator, pursue the means of the world, such as working the land, plowing and sowing it, as written, and God took man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and guard it, and also to use other living creatures for the benefit of his sustenance, and for building cities and preparing food, and to marry a woman and have relations and populate the world. He will be rewarded for his intentions and heart and mind to serve God, whether or not his desire is accomplished, as written, if you eat from the toils of your hand, you are praiseworthy and is good for you. And our sages of blessed memory said, let all your actions be for the sake of heaven. In this way, his trust in God will be intact, undamaged by the toiling and the means to earn a livelihood, as long as his intention, his heart and mind is for the sake of heaven, to do the will of God, that the world be populated and built up. One should not think that his livelihood depends on a particular means, and that if these means fail, his livelihood will not come from a different means. Rather, trust in the Almighty and know that all means are equal for him. He can provide using whatever means and at any time, and whoever he so wishes. It is written, For with the Lord there is no limitation to save with many or few. But you must remember the Lord your God, for it is he that gives you strength and makes wealth in order to establish his covenant with which he swore to your forefathers, as it is this day. And not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saves the Lord of hosts. Chapter 4. Really loving this, saying this is some of the most fundamental wisdom that's really at the heart of living. How do you make a livelihood? And saying we have to trust in the Creator. We're given logical reasons that it really only makes sense to put our trust in the Creator. But what about the dilemmas? What about the fact that we have to earn a livelihood? What about all the suffering we go through? What about the fact that sometimes the wicked appear to prosper and the righteous appear to suffer, and all these things? So these are some of the most fundamental principles of theology. That's why this book is so meaningful and powerful to me. That's why I'm reading it out. Anyone have any comments? You could add in the comments or later, and I really hope that this wisdom penetrates your hearts as much as mine. And as said, many points in my life, I've had very big decisions to make, and I made these decisions largely on the wisdom that I'm reading right now. Chapter 4. When trust applies and when it does not. The concerns for which the believer is obligated to put his trust in God are of two categories: matters of this world and matters of the next world. Matters of this world subdivide in two divisions: matters of this world that benefit for the benefit of this world, and matters of this world for the benefit of the next world. The matters of this world for the benefit of this world subdivide into three parts: what is beneficial for the body only; 2, what contributes to one's maintenance or enables one to gain wealth and various possessions; 3, what is beneficial for dealing with one's household, wife and relatives, one's friends and enemies, and for those above and below him among the various classes of people. Matters of the world for the benefit of the next world. 1, duties of the heart and limbs which relate to oneself only, and whose actions do not result in benefit or damage to other. 2, duties of the limbs which cannot be done without association with other people, where one of them is active and the other is passive. For example, giving charity, acts of kindness, teaching wisdom, instructing others to do good and refrain from evil. Matters of the afterlife subdivide into two parts: 1, the reward that is deserved, and 2, that which is a special kindness which the Creator bestows to the pious and to the prophets in the next world. The 7 categories to trust in: 1, matters of the body alone; 2, matters of one's possessions and means of earning a livelihood; 3, matters of one's wife, children, relatives, friends, and enemies, and those above and below him; 4, duties of the heart and limb which only benefit or damage oneself; 5, duties of the limb which affect others as well, whether benefiting or harming; 6, reward in the afterlife according to one's conduct in this world; 7, reward in the afterlife from the Creator in the way of kindness on his treasured ones and those who love him. As written, how great is your goodness that you have hidden away for those who fear you. You have done for those who trust in you before the sons of men. Since I have explained the fundamental introductions which make it possible for one to place his trust in the Almighty, it is proper for me to follow them with an explanation of the proper way of trust in each of the 7 categories through which one should trust in God and something beside them. Just to throw in, this book was written 1,000 years ago, and this man's basically an Aristotelian, and he's just logically breaking stuff down of the deepest theological matter in a way really that you don't find today. In a lot of this wisdom, like you might think like Confucius or like the Quran and saying, but really it's Judaism. And it's the wisdom of the ancients that you can't really find in the modern world today. And that's why it pays to give so much effort to try to understand the wisdom of the ancients. And you see how clearly and logically these most fundamental things are broken down. First category, matter of the body alone. For the first category, matters of the body alone, these are his life and death, his income for obtaining food, clothing, his shelter, his health and his illness, his traits, the proper way of trust in the Almighty. For all of these matters, to submit oneself to the course the Creator has decreed for him in these matters, and to place one's trust in God, and to know that none of these matters can come to be unless it was previously determined by God, that this would be the most proper situation for his matter in this world and the next, and ultimately the greatest good for him, and that the Creator has exclusive total control over all these matters. And none of them can any created being advise any plan or exercise any control except through his permission, decree, and judgment. And just like one's life and death, health and sickness are not in the hands of others, so too one's livelihood, clothing, and other bodily needs are also not in their control. With clear faith that his matters are given over to the decrees of the Creator, and that the Creator's choice for him is the best choice, it is also his duty to be engaged in the means which appear to be beneficial to him, and to choose what seems to be the best choice under the circumstances, and the Almighty will do according to what he has already pre-decreed. An example of this: even though human beings' end and number of days are determined by the Creator's decree, nevertheless it is a man's duty to pursue means to survive, such as drink and food, clothing and shelter, according to his needs, and he must not leave this to the Almighty and think, if the Creator has pre-decreed that I will live, then my body will survive without food all the days of my life. Therefore, I will not trouble myself in seeking a livelihood and toiling in it. Likewise, one should not put himself in danger while trusting the decree of a Creator that he will live a set time, drinking poison or going to battle lions and other dangerous animals without necessity, or to cast himself into the sea or into fire, or similar things that a man is not sure of them and puts his life in danger. The verse has already warned us, saying, "You shall not try the Lord your God," because either one of two things will happen. Either he will die, and it will be considered as he killed himself, and he will be held accountable for this, just as if he had killed another man, despite his death in this fashion was the decree of the Almighty and occurred with his permission. And we have already been commanded not to murder another human being in any form, for the verse, "Do not murder." And the closer the murderer is to the murderer, the more the punishment should be severe, is written, on pursuing his brother with a sword, corrupting his mercy. And similar, the punishment one kills himself will undoubtedly be very great. This is like a slave whose master commanded him to guard a place for a fixed time and warned him not to leave the place until his messenger will come. When the slave saw that the messenger was late in coming, he abandoned his post, and his master became furious at him and punished him very severely. Similarly, one who causes his own death moves out of the service of God and into rebellion against him by putting himself in mortal danger. This is why you shall find Samuel saying, Samuel said, "How shall I go? For if Saul hears, he will kill me." And the Lord says, "You will take a heifer with you, and you will say, I've come to slaughter the sacrifice for the Lord." And this was not considered a lack of trust in the Almighty, and the answer from God to him shows that his zeal in this was appropriate. And God answers him, "You shall take a heifer with you, and you shall say, I've come to bring an offering to the Lord." If this were considered a lack of trust in God, would have answered him, "I cause death and grant life, I strike and I heal," or something familiar, as he answered Moses when Moses claimed, "But I am slow of speech and slow of tongue," answering him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes a man mute or deaf, seeing or blind?" And if Samuel, with his perfect righteousness, did not find a light matter to put himself to a slight risk or danger, and even though he would be doing so, the man of God, as he commanded him, "Fill your horn with oil and go, and I shall send you to Yeshai the Bethlehemite, for I have seen for myself a king among his sons." All the more so for someone not commanded by God, this would be considered reprehensible. The second possibility is that he will be saved by God's help, that his merits will be annulled, and he will lose his reward. As the sages said in this matter, a man shall never put himself in danger thinking that a miracle will be performed for him, because maybe no miracle will be done for him, and even if a miracle is done for him, his merits are reduced. As Jacob, our forefather, said, "I'm not worthy for all your kindnesses," to which the Targum explains, "My merits have diminished due to all your favors and kindness." Proper trust in matters of earning a livelihood. What we have explained for matters of life and death also apply to the duty to pursue means of health, food, clothing, shelter, good habits, and distancing from the opposite, while firmly believing that the means to these things do not help at all in attaining them without the decree of the Creator. Then when a farmer must plow his field, clear it from weeds, sow it in water, and when rainwater is not available, let him trust the Creator to make it fertile and to protect it from plagues, to increase and to bless the crops. And it is not proper to leave the land unworked and unsowed, and trust to God and rely on his decree that it will grow fruit without first being sown. And likewise, workers, merchants, and contractors are all under duty to pursue their livelihood, well trusting in God that their livelihood is in his hands and under his control, and he guarantees to provide a man and fully provides for him through whatever means he wishes. One should not think that the means can benefit or harm him in the least. If one man's livelihood comes through one of the means he worked on, it is proper for him to not trust in this source, rejoice in it, intensify it, and turn his heart to it, because this will weaken his trust in the Almighty. It is improper to think that the source would be more beneficial to him than what was pre-decreed from the Creator. He shall not rejoice for having pursued and engaged in it. Rather, he should thank the Creator who provided for him after his labor, and that he not make his work and struggle result in nothing. As written, if you eat the toil of your hands, you are praiseworthy, and it is good for you. A wise man once said, I'm amazed of he who gives to another what the Creator decreed for the latter, and afterward reminds the latter of the favor he did for him, and seeks to be thanked for it. And I'm even more amazed by one who receives his livelihood from another who is forced to provide for him, and then submits himself before him, pleases him, and praises him. If one's livelihood fails to come through the means he has worked on, it is possible that the money allocated to him for this day already reached his hands, or it will come through another means. However the case, it is proper for him to engage in the means of earning a livelihood, not be lax in pursuing after him, provided they are suited to his traits or physical abilities, as I have previously explained. And all the while he should trust in God that he will not abandon him, neglect him, or ignore him. It is written, the Lord is good, a stronghold on a day of trouble, and knows. Proper trust in matters of health and sickness. Similarly, we shall say regarding health and sickness, a man is placed under a duty to trust in the Creator in this, while working on maintaining his health according to the means whose nature promotes this, and to fight sickness according to the customary ways as the Creator commanded, and he shall surely heal him. All this without trusting in the means of health or illness, that they come help or hurt without the permission of the Creator. And when one puts his trust in the Creator, he will heal him with or without a means. It is written, he sends his word and heals them. It is even possible that he will heal him through something that is normally very harmful, as you have seen for the story of Elisha and the bad water. They healed their damaging properties with salt, and similarly, and God showed him a tree, and he tossed it into the waters, and the waters became sweet. And the Midrash Tankunim there explains that this was a bitter oleander tree. Another example, let him smear crushed figs on the boils, and he will heal. And you already know what happened to the pious King Asa when he trusted in the doctors and removed his trust from God regarding his illness. The sharp rebuke he received from this, the verse said, for he brings pains and binds it, his wounds, and his hands heal. So here this is basically, like we said in the previous chapter, in the grand paradox of how does God know the future, but yet we still have free will. And we said that we can't answer that paradox because the fact is that both are true. God does know the future and does know what's going to happen, but at the same time, we do have free will, and we should look at it like our choice matters. And we can't just sin and get away with it just because it's pre-decreed. And so if we're going to sin, we're going to sin, and so on and so on. So here too, in all these things of livelihood and health and taking care of ourselves and fulfilling our needs, we know that God has decreed what we're going to have, and we should have complete faith in that God is the one providing these things. And it's might be through the extent of our extortion, but is really through the kindness of God. And we have to keep this paradox in mind. And when we trust in God, when we work in the world, when we seek out a livelihood, when we try to better our health and have goodwill with the world and the creations, and so on and so on. Second category, possessions and means of earning a livelihood. For the second category, matters of a man's possessions, means of financial gain in his various pursuits, whether in commerce, skilled trade, peddling, business management, official appointments, property, rentals, banking, work of things, treasures, contracting, pardon me, writing work, other types of work, going to a faraway desert and seas, and other similar things for what people toil in to amass money and to increase the superfluous. The proper way of trust in the Almighty for this is to engage in the means which God has made available to him to the extent necessary for his maintenance and sufficient for his needs of this world. And if the Creator will decree for him more than this, it will come to him without trouble or exertion, provided he trust in the Almighty, for he does not exclusively pursue the means, nor inwardly trust in them in his heart. And if the Creator has not decreed for him more than his sustenance, even if all of those in heaven and earth were to try to increase it, they would not be capable by any way nor by any means. And where one trusts in God, he will find peace in his mind, tranquility in spirit, confident that God will not give over his portion to someone else, nor send it to him earlier or later than the time he decreed for it. Proper trust for the wealthy. Sometimes the Creator directs the livelihood of many men through one man. This is in order to test that man whether he will serve God or rebel against him, and you will place this to be among the man's most difficult tests and source of temptations. For example, a king who provides for his armies and servants, or princes, ministers of the king, important officials, all who are surrounded with groups of their servants, attendants, officers, wives, and relatives. They exert themselves to obtain money for their dependents through all types of means, regardless whether they are good or bad means. And the foolish among them will err on three folds. One, in acquiring money. He will use bad and degrading means to take what the Creator has decreed he will take, and if he is sought after as well for proper means, he would have reached his desire, and both his righteous and secular affairs would have succeeded, and he would not have received any less from what the Creator had decreed for him. 2, he thinks that all the money that reaches him is for his own support. He does not understand that the money consists of 3 parts, 1 part for the food he needs for his body alone, and this is something God assures to all living creatures to the end of its days. The second part for food of others, such as his wife, children, servant, employees, and the like. This extra money is not assured by God to all people, but rather only to a select few and under special conditions, and this opportunity presents itself at certain times, but not at others, according to the rulings of the Creator's system of kindness and justice. 3rd, money to hold on to. This is money which has no benefit for the man. The man guards it and accumulates it until he bequeaths it to another or loses it. The foolish person thinks that all the money decreed for him by the Creator is for his own sustenance and physical maintenance, and so he eagerly pursues and exerts much as effort to acquire it, and it's possible that he is amassing wealth for his widow's next husband, his stepson, or for even his greatest enemy. 3, the 3rd error is that he provides money to those dependent as the Creator decreed this would happen through him, but he reminds them of his favors as if he were the one who provided for them and did them a kindness, and he expects them to thank and praise him richly, and that they serve him due to it, and he becomes arrogant, haughty, inflated of heart. He neglects to thank them. He neglects to thank God for them. He thinks that if he did not give the money to them, it would remain by him, and that if he did not provide for them, they would have no money. But really, he is the poor man who will toil for nothing in this world, and he will lose his reward in the next. The wiser man, however, conducts himself in these 3 ways according to what will be proper for his religious and secular pursuits. He trusts in what is in God's hands is greater than he trusts in what is in his own hands, because he does not know if the money in his hand is meant for his own benefit or is merely placed in his care, and thus he will gain honor in this world and receive rich reward in the next life. It is written, "Hallelujah, praiseworthy is the man who fears God," until the end of it. Why are the masses forced to work enormously? There are some classes of people who busy themselves in acquiring money and amassing wealth only for the love of being honored by other people and to make a name for themselves, and no amount of money is ever enough for them. This is due to their ignorance of what will bring real honor in this world and the next. The reason they make this error because they see the masses honoring the wealthy, but really this honor is motivated by a desire for what they possess and to try to get some of what is in their hands. If the masses reflected and understood that the wealthy do not have the capacity nor the power either to give or to hold back someone except to whom the Creator decreed, they would not hope to anyone besides God, nor would they find anyone worthy of honor except for he the Creator has distinguished with praiseworthy qualities, for which he is worthy of the Creator's honor. Is written, "Those who honor me I will honor." And because in honoring the wealthy the masses were foolish in the causes of real honor, the Creator added to their foolishness in the causes of their requests for money, and so they fell into great effort and tremendous toiling all of their days, while they abandoned that which is their duty to busy themselves with and to which they should hasten, namely fulfilling their duties to the Creator and to thank Him for the good He bestows on them whereby they desire, would undoubtedly been closer to them in this way. As written, long life is its own right. It is left wealth and honor. And wealth and honor is from you. Among those who seek wealth, sometimes one reaches all of his heart's desires through means, as we mentioned. For another, it came through inheritance or the like, and he thinks his wealth is due to the means, and without them he would not have received anything, and he praises the means and not the cause. How similar is a man in the desert, thirst weighing on him, he finds unclean water in a pit and becomes full of joy. He quenches the thirst from them, and afterwards he moves a bit further and finds a well of pure water. He regrets on what he did previously of drinking and quenching his thirst from the impure water. Similarly, for the man who became wealthy through a certain means, if this means would have failed, he would have attained it through another means, as we explained earlier, and as the verse says, nothing can prevent God from saving, whether through many or through few. Proper trust in tight financial times. And the proper way for one who trusts in God when his livelihood is withheld for some day is to say in one's heart, He who took me out from the womb to this world at a fixed time and moment and did not take me out at an earlier or later time, He is the one who is withholding my livelihood for a fixed time and a fixed day because He knows what is good for me. Likewise, when one's livelihood comes very exactly no more than the amount for basic food, it is proper for him to reflect in his heart and tell himself, He who prepared my sustenance at my mother's breast and in my beginning, according to my need, and what was sufficient for me day by day, until He replaced it for me with something better, and the milks coming exactly did not damage me at all, so too I will not be able to be damaged now until the end of my days by sending me my food in the limited exact amount. He will be rewarded for this. The Creator told the ancestors at Mount Sinai, whose matter was in this way, the people shall go out each day and gather what they need for the day, and go and call out to the ears of Jerusalem and say, I remember for the kindness of your youth, the love of your betrothal, when you followed me into the wilderness in the land that was not sown. Likewise, if one livelihood comes through one means, but not through any other means, or from one place and not from any other place, or through one person, not through any other person, let one say in his heart, He who created me in a certain form, shape, characteristics, and measure, and not through any other, for my purpose and benefit, He has chosen that my livelihood come through ways suitable to my pursuit and benefit, and not through any other ways. And He brought me into the world at a fixed time, and through two specific people, and not through other people of the world. He has chosen me, my livelihood, for a specific place and through a specific person, and He made him the means to my livelihood and for my benefit. As written, God is righteous in all His ways. Third category, social matters. The explanation of the third category matters one's wife, children, household members, relatives, friends, enemies, acquaintances, those higher and lower than him among the various classes of people. The proper way of trusting God is as follows. A man is necessarily in either one of two situations. Either he is a stranger or he is among his family and relatives. Proper trust for one living alone. If he is a stranger, let his companionship be with God during his time of loneliness, and his trust in Him during his period of being a stranger, and let him contemplate that the soul is a stranger in this world, and that all people are like strangers here, as the verse says, because you are strangers and temporary residents with me, and let him reflect in his heart that all those who have relatives here in a short time will be left a solitary stranger. Neither relative nor son will be able to help him, and none of them will be with him. And afterwards, let him consider that as a stranger, he is freed from the heavy burden of maintaining relatives and fulfilling his duties towards them. He should consider this to be one of the kindnesses of the Creator towards him, because if he needed to pursue a livelihood from providing his material needs, his exertion would be lighter without a wife and children, and their absence is peace of mind for him, and it is good. And if he is concerned about his interest in the next world, his mind will undoubtedly be clearer and freer when he is alone. And therefore the ascetics would leave their relatives and homes and go to the mountains in order to focus their hearts in the service of God. Likewise, the prophets during the area of prophecy would leave their homes and live in solitude to fulfill their duties to the Creator. As you know from the story of Eliyahu's meeting with Elisha, which is said of Elisha, 12 pairs of oxen were before him, and he was with the 12th. And as soon as Eliyahu hinted to him a small hint, he understood him and said, "Let me please kiss my father and my mother, and I will go with you." And afterwards he went after Eliyahu and ministered to him. It is said about one of the ascetics who traveled through a country to teach its inhabitants to the service of God, he found them all dressed in the same manner and adorned in the same way. Their graves were near their homes, and he did not see among them any woman. He asked them about this, and they answered him, "The reason we are all dressed like this is so that there's no noticeable difference between the rich man and the poor man, and the rich man will not come to arrogance for his wealth, and the poor man will not be embarrassed of his poverty, and so that our matters above the earth shall be in our eyes like the matters below in the earth." It is said of one of the kings that he would mix with his servants, and there was no notable difference between him and them, because he would conduct himself in the way of humility in his dress and adornment. As to the reason why the graves of the dead are near our homes, they said, "This is so that we encounter them and prepare ourselves for our deaths, and that we prepare provisions for the afterlife. As you notice that we have separated ourselves from women and children, know that we prepared for them a village near here. When one of us needs something from him, he goes to them, and after obtaining his wants, returns to us. This we did because we saw how much distraction of the heart, great loss, and great extortion and strain there was when they were among us, and the great peace of mind from all this in separating from them the focus of matters of the afterlife, and to be repulsed by matters of this world." And their words found favor in the eyes of the ascetic, and he blessed them for commended them on their matters. Proper trust for one's wife, relatives, friends, and enemies. If the one who trusts in God has a wife, relatives, friends, enemies, let him trust in God to be saved from them. He should strive to fulfill his duties to them, to do their wishes, to be wholehearted with them, to provide their needs willingly, not like one forced to do so. He should refrain from causing any harm to them, try to promote what is good for them. He should deal faithfully towards them in all matters and teach them the ways that will be beneficial for them in their religious matters and their secular ways. In the service of the Creator, it is written, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself, and do not hate your brother in your heart." Do not do this out of hope for future benefits from them, or to pay them back for past benefits, nor should you do this out of love of being honored or praised by them, or a desire to rule over them, but rather with the sole motive to fulfill the commandment of the Creator and to guard his covenant and precepts over them. The person whose motive in fulfilling their wishes is one of the reprehensible motives that we mentioned above will not obtain what he wants from them in this world. He will tire himself for nothing. He will lose his reward in the afterlife. But if his sole motive is to serve God, the Almighty will help them to make a return to him in this world, and God will place his praise in their mouths, and they will hold him in high esteem, and he will reach the great reward in the afterlife, as the Almighty said to Solomon, "In what you did not ask, I will give you also wealth and honor." Proper trust for benefiting from others. By the ways of trusting God and dealing with those above him or below him, the various classes of men as follows. The proper way to act when one needs to request some benefit of someone above or below him is to trust in God and to consider them as means of obtaining what he needs, just like one makes the working and sowing of the land a means of attaining his food. If God wishes to support him through it, he will make the seeds sprout, grow, and multiply, and one does not thank the land for this, but rather he thanks the Creator alone. And if the Almighty will not desire to supply him through it, the land will not produce, or it will produce but be struck by damaging things, and one does not blame the land. So too, when he seeks something from one of them, it should be equal in his eyes whether the person he asked is weak or strong, and he should trust in God for its completion. And if it was completed through one of them, let him thank the Creator fulfilled his desire, and thank the person through whom it was done for his goodwill towards him, and the Creator brought his benefit through him. It is known that the Creator does not bring good except through the righteous, and it is rare that he brings a loss through them. And the sages said, merit occurs through the meritorious, and guilt through the guilty. In the verse, no wrong shall be caused for the righteous. And if his request is not accomplished through them, one should not blame them and not consider it due to their being lax in him. Rather, he should thank the Almighty who chose what is best for him in this and praise them according to his knowledge and their efforts to fulfill his will, even though the matter was not completed according to his will and their desire. Similarly, one should act with his acquaintances and friends and his business associates, employees, and partners. If someone higher or lower than himself requests from him to do something for them, he should wholeheartedly use every means to do so and apply his mind to the matter, provided one is capable of doing it and that the person who requested it is worthy that he exerts himself on his behalf. And after this, he should trust in the Almighty for its completion. If God completes it through him and makes him the cause of benefiting another, he should thank God for this privilege. If God withholds this from him and he's not capable of doing it, he should not blame himself, and he should inform the person that he was not lax in doing it, provided that he indeed exerted himself to do it. Proper trust for dealing with enemies. But for one's enemies, those jealous of him, those who seek him harm, he should trust in God regarding this matter. He should bear their contempt and should not treat them back in the same way. Rather, he should pay them back with kindness and try to benefit them as much as he possibly can. Remember in his heart that only God has the ability to benefit or harm him. If his enemy becomes a means to harm him, you should judge them favorably and suspect it is due to himself or his past deeds from his bad start in life towards God. He should plead with the Almighty to seek from him to atone from his sin, and then his enemies will become his friends. As the wise man said, when God is pleased with a man's way, even his enemies will make peace with him. Proper trust in the free will to serve God. The fourth category, duties of the heart and limbs which don't affect others. Proper trust in the free will to serve God. Explanation of the fourth category matters of the duties of the heart and the limbs which only benefit or harm himself. For example, fasting, praying, dwelling in a sukkah, taking the lulav, wearing tzitzis, observing the Sabbath or the holidays, refraining from sin. This category also includes all the duties of the heart, since their performance does not affect others and their benefit or harm is limited only to oneself and is not shared by others. I will explain the proper way of trusting the Almighty in all of these, and I will ask the Almighty to teach me the truth in his mercy. Any human action which is either service or sin can only take place if three factors occur. 1, the choice of the heart and mind. 2, the intent and resolve to do what one chose. 3, the endeavor to complete the act with one's physical limbs and bring it into actuality. Of these three factors, 2 are not beyond our control, namely the choice of service or sin, and 2, the intent and resolve to carry out the choice. For these, trusting in God would be a mistake and foolishness, because the Creator left free choice in our hands whether to serve him or rebel against him. It is written, life and death I have set before you, and you shall choose life. But the bringing out of the act into actuality, he did not leave in our hands, but rather made it depend on external means which sometimes are available and sometimes are not. If in choosing to serve the Almighty one would trust in him and think to himself, if I choose the service of God, if I will not choose the service of God, nor attempt to do any part of it until he chooses what is good for me of it, he has already strayed from the straight path and slipped his feet away from the proper way, because the Creator has already commanded us to choose in matters of his service, and he will tend to make efforts towards it with complete wholehearted resolve for the sake of his great name, and he has informed us that it is proper way for our welfare in this world and in the next. If the necessary means are available to us so that we are capable of accomplishing the work in God's service which we choose to do, then we will receive the great reward for choosing it, for the intent and resolve to do so, and for completing the actions by our physical limbs. But if the accomplishment with the physical limbs is withheld from us, then we will receive reward for our choice and intent to do so, as we previously explained, and similarly for punishment of sins. The difference between the service of God and secular activities in this world regarding trusting God is as follows. For secular matters, it was not revealed to us which one of all these means is best and most beneficial for us, nor the ways in which some course is more harmful and worse than others. We do not know which particular trade is best suited for us and most fitting for us in obtaining money, preserving health, and general well-being, nor are we to know which business sector or which journey to undertake, or which other worldly endeavors will be successful if we engage in them. Therefore, it follows we must put our trust in the Almighty, that He will help us choose and carry out what is the best choice for us, provided that we apply ourselves and that we plead to Him to arouse in our hearts to make good and proper choices for ourselves. But the service of God is not like this, because God has already taught us the proper way, for it commanded us to choose it and gave us the ability to do it. If we then plead to Him in the choice we should make and trust in Him that He will reveal to us what is good for us, we will be mistaken in our words and foolish in our trust, because He already taught us the proper way with which will be good for us in this world and the next. It is written, God has commanded us to fill these statutes, to fear the Lord our God for our good and all our days. And regarding the reward in the next world, we will be rewarded if we are careful to observe. Furthermore, in secular matters, sometimes a good means changes to become a bad means and vice versa, while in the service of God and transgression is not so. Matters of good and evil do not switch positions and never change. Hence, for religious acts, trusting God is proper only in the completion stage of the act. After choosing it wholeheartedly and faithfully, and after the second stage of resolving and making efforts to do it with a pure heart and with intent to do it for the sake of His great name, with this we are obligated to beseech Him to help us in it and to teach us on it, as written, lead me in your truth and teach me, and lead me in your path of your commandments, for I desire it. And I have chose the way of truth. I have placed your ordinance before me, and I have clung to your testimonies. O Lord, put me not to shame, and take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I have hoped in your judgments. All these verses demonstrate that the psalmist's service to God was his own choice. He prayed to God for two things only: one, to wholly devote his heart and to strengthen his choice in the service of God by distancing the distractions of the world from his heart and eyes, that he said, unite my heart to fear your name, and uncover my eyes that I may gaze at the wonders of your Torah. Turn away my eyes from beholding vanity, incline my heart towards your Torah and not to unjust gain, and many more. And two, to strengthen him physically to be able to complete the acts of service of God. This is what it's meant: lead me up in your path of your commandments, support me, and I will be saved, and many more like this. And I will explain in this gate which factors help and harm these things, and the proper path in it with God's help. Fifth category: duties of the limb which affect others. The fifth category: physical duties which affect others, whether beneficially or harmfully, such as giving charity, types, teaching wisdom, commanding others to do so, warning them against evil, returning loans on faith, keeping a secret, speaking well of others, good activities, honoring parents, bringing the wicked back to God, instructing, advising others what will be good for them, pitying the poor and treating them with mercy, patiently bearing their content when arousing them to the service of God, inspiring them to hope for the reward of doing good, and instilling in them fear of punishment for doing bad. The proper way of trusting God for these is for one to keep in mind all of these and similar acts, resolve and make efforts to practice them according to what we previously explained in the fourth category regarding the duty when choosing to have the sole intent of drawing near to God alone, not for acquiring a name or honor among human beings, nor out of hope to receive reward from them, nor to try to rule over them, and afterwards, having done his utmost to trust in God in the completion of the acts which he undertook according to what God wants from us. In all this, one should be careful to hide his deeds as much as possible from those who do not need to know, because if it is kept hidden, the reward will be greater than if it becomes known, and that which he is unable to hide. Then remember the important general principle which we have explained, namely that neither benefit nor harm can come from all created things except by the permission of the Creator. When the Creator completes a mitzvah through him, he should consider that he is this favor bestowed on him from the Creator. He should not rejoice if other people praise him for doing so, nor desire that they honor him for it, since this will bring him to become proud of his actions, and the purity of heart and motives towards God will be ruined. Thereby his deeds will be spoiled, and his reward for it will be lost. I will explain this later in the proper gate, the gate of submission with God's help. Sixth category: reward in this world and the next. The explanation of the sixth category regarding the reward in this world and the next, which one merits for his good deeds in this world, is divided into two parts. One, sometimes for an act the reward is given in this world only, or it is given in the next world only. And two, sometimes the reward is given in both worlds for one act. This was explained to us clearly. However, the Creator guaranteed to his people a general reward for general good behavior, but he did not specify the details of reward in this world for each act of service like he did regarding the punishments in the world for transgression. For example, he specified which offenses warrant capital punishment by stoning, burning, decapitation, or strangulation, 40 lashes, or death through providence, premature death, monetary fines, 2, 4, and 5-fold monetary damages, by ox pit, 2, fire, damaging a man, embarrassing, by seizing, slander, and other offenses. But regarding the reward and punishment in the afterlife, the prophet Moses did not explain anything for several reasons. One of these is that the semblance of the soul without the body is foreign to us, and even less known is what the soul in that state would take pleasure or suffer in. However, this was explained to one who understood such things that God spoke to Joshua, I will give you a place to walk among these in that stand. And this was not referring to when the soul is joined to the body, but rather was a hint of what would happen after death, where the soul in its simply ethereal state, divested from any form and no longer using the body, resumes the form of the angels after it had been purified and made radiant when his deeds were good in this world. Another reason is that the explanation of reward and punishment in the next world was received by the people from the prophets and can be derived by the wise, and it was left out of the books as much as the explanation of the positive and negative commandments were left out, relying on the transmission from the oral tradition. Another reason is that people were foolish and of little understanding, something which is not hard to see in the verses. The Creator conducted himself with them like a father who has mercy on his young son when he wants to discipline him slowly and gently. As written, Israel was a child and I loved him. When a father wants to educate his young son the wisdom with which he will attain exalted levels, and the youth is not capable of understanding them at the time, if he tries to induce him, saying, bear the hard discipline and the learning in order that you will reach great levels, the son would not have patience to bear this, and he would not listen to his father because he does not understand them. But if the father promised him with what is pleasurable right away, whether food or drink, fine clothing, a nice wagon, or the like, and he warned him that if he did not heed, he would suffer what would cause him immediate pain and hunger and nakedness, spankings, or the like, and he gave him clear proofs and tangible evidence so as to impress these promises and warnings in his son's mind and the truth of his statements, it will be easy for the son to bear the strain and the discipline and to endure the tedious work. And when he becomes a young man and his intellect strengthens, he will understand the intent and the discipline he was put through and turn towards them. He will think little of the sweetness or the pleasures which he had earlier been so eager to run towards. This kind of education was a kindness towards him. Similarly, the Creator encouraged his people with promises of reward and threatened them with punishment that would come soon, because he knew that after they would be strongly established in their service, their foolishness regarding reward and punishment here on earth would shed, and their intent in the service would be to him, and they would direct their conduct for him. And in this way, we can explain all the physical forms ascribed to the Creator in Scripture. Another reason is that man does not become worthy of the reward in the next world due to his good deeds alone. Rather, he is deemed by God worthy of it due to two things besides his good deed. One, that he teaches other people the service of God and guides them to do good. As written, they who bring merit to the public shall be as the stars forever. And also to them that rebuke shall be delight, and on them will come the blessing of the good. And when the industrious man will combine the reward for those who he brought merit with the reward of his own good deeds and the reward for the faith in his heart and patient acceptance, he will be by the Creator worthy of the reward in the next world. 2. The second factor is the kindness of the Almighty and generosity and goodness, as written, to you God is kindness, for you pay a man according to his deeds. The reason for this is that even if a man's deeds are numerous like the sands of a seashore, it would not weigh enough to cover even one favor of the Lord has bestowed on him in this world, all the more so if he committed any sins, because the Creator will hold a man strictly to account for his obligation of gratitude. All of the good deeds would be canceled and wiped out, even by the smallest favor the Creator has done for him, and that which the Creator owes him will not amount to anything. Hence, that which the Creator rewards a person for his good deeds is to be regarded as the divine grace to him. The punishment in both worlds, however, is through truth and justice, as it is a debt a man must pay. Yet here the Creator's loving kindness is extended to us in both worlds, as is written, to you, God, belongs loving kindness, and the compassionate one will atone for sin and will not destroy. Another reason is good deeds are two categories. One, those concealed from others and visible only to the Creator, like the duties of the heart and other similar duties. Two, those visible in the limbs and not concealed from other creatures. For the fulfillment of the visible duties of the limb, the Creator rewards with visible reward in this world, while the fulfillment of concealed duties he rewards with hidden reward, namely in the next world. Therefore King David spoke of this with words which hint to this matter, is written, how great is your goodness, which you hid away for those that fear you, which you have done for them that take refuge in you before the sons of men. And likewise the ways of punishment for hidden and revealed misdeeds is similar to the way of reward. Proof of this view is as follows. God has guaranteed to his people that for their visible service, he will give them visible and swift reward in this world. This is explained in the Bible, if you will go in my ways, and likewise for visible sins, visible and swift punishment in this world, because the masses understand only that which is visible, not that which is hidden. As is written, the hidden things belong to God, but the revealed things belong to us and to our children forever. And the verse says that if the people will turn their eyes away from the evil acts of this man and his family, I will turn my face to this man and his family. Hence the reward and punishment for the fulfillment of transgression of duties of the heart belong to the Creator. Therefore Scripture admitted an explanation of their reward and punishment in the next world. Another reason why reward and punishments mentioned in Scripture are limited to those in this world only is because the prophet is addressing worldly people. On the other hand, since Joshua was in the mystical world of angels, God told him, I will give you a place to walk among these that stand. The proper way of motivating with hope and fear should be in accord with the time and place. Understand this. Another reason is that the purpose of the reward in the next world is essentially clinging to God and drawing near to his supernal light. As written, your righteousness will go before you. The glory of God shall gather you in, and the wise will shine like the radiance of the firmament, and also to bring back his soul from the pit, and to enlighten with the light of the living, and no one can reach there except he who the Creator finds favor in him, and the favor of the Creator is the root of the reward. As written, his anger is but a moment, and his favor is life. And there hints further that pleasing the Almighty is the greatest reward. This is written, my soul will not abhor you, and I will turn to you and be unto you a God, and you will be unto me a people. Trust in the reward and punishment. Trusting in God regarding the reward in this world and next, which he promised to the righteous man for his service, namely, that he will pay reward to one who is fitting for it and mete out punishment to one who deserves it, is incumbent on the believer and is essential part of perfect faith in God, as written, and he believed God, and he was counted to him as righteous. And had I not believed to see the goodness of God in the land of the giving. It is not proper for one to trust in his own good deeds and assure himself that he will receive reward in this world and the next due to his good deeds. Rather, he should strive and exert himself and make efforts to thank God and be grateful for his constant kindness to him, and not be motivated by hope of future reward for his deeds. Rather, he should trust in God and try his best to pay his debt of gratitude for his great favors towards him. As our sages have said, do not be like the servants who serve their master on condition of receiving a reward. Rather, be like the servants who serve their master without the condition of receiving a reward, and let the fear of heaven be upon you. One of the pious said, if it takes strict account of one of what he is obligated to the Creator and for his kindness to him, no man would ever be worthy of the reward of the next world for his deeds. Rather, it is only a kindness of the Almighty. Therefore, do not trust in your deeds, as King David said, to you, God, is kindness, for you pay a man according to his deeds. Seventh category, trusting God for the special grace to his treasured ones. The seventh category, trusting God special grace to his elect and treasures ones, on whom many favors which are indiscernible will be bestowed in the next world. The proper way of trusting God is as follows: to exert oneself in the means which bring one to the high levels of the pious who are worthy of the special grace from God. This entails conducting oneself in the ways of the aesthetics and the loathe worldly pleasures, and to uproot from one's heart the love of them and the desire for them, and to replace these with the love of the Creator, and to devote oneself to him, to delight in him, to be desolate, astonished from the world and its inhabitants, and to follow the ways of the prophets and the pious, and to trust that the Almighty will show him favor, as he will do with them in the afterlife. But one who trusts that God will thus favor him without the means of performing good deeds is a fool and a simpleton. He is like those whom it said, they act like Zimri and expect the reward of Pinchas. Some signs of those who have reached this high level are those who teach servants of God on the service, demonstrate patient bearing and acceptance in times of trial and difficulty, regarding everything else as insignificant compared with the fulfillment of the commandments of God, as we see by the test of Abraham, or Canania, Mishael, and Azariah, who were thrown into the furnace, or Daniel, who was thrown into the lion's den, or the 10 martyrs. Who is worthy of the bliss of the afterlife? Whoever chooses to die in the service of God, rather than rebel against them. Whoever chooses poverty rather than riches, sickness rather than health, suffering rather than tranquility, submits to the Creator's judgment and desires in his decrees. Such a person is worthy of the divine grace of the Creator in the bliss of the future world, of which is written that I may cause those who love me to inherit substance, and I will fulfill their wishes, and no eye has ever seen, O God, besides you, what he has prepared for he that waits for him. And how great is your goodness that you have hidden away for those who fear you. Ooh, chapter 5. That was pretty intense. Yeah, sorry. This was reading straight for 2 hours. We're chapter 5. You will finish this up. This is intense stuff. This is, the fundamentals of theology. Trusting God. We got to internalize it to our heart. The first 3 chapters were more philosophical underpinnings that we take upon our hearts, but they're fundamental to actually believe and trust in God. And we see that trusting God is what permeates our actions in what we do with our daily lives, affecting all aspects of how we deal with friend and foe alike, with earning a livelihood, sickness and health, and all these other things. Chapter 5, the difference between one who trusts in God and one who does not, with regard to employing the means for earning a livelihood, I say, are 7. One who trusts God accepts his judgment in all his matters and thanks him for good as well as for the bad. As written, God gave, God took back, blessed be his name. And as written, of kindness and of judgment I will sing to you, which the sages explained, if kindness I will sing, if justice I will sing. You will bestow kindness upon me, I will praise you with the blessing. Blessed be he who is good and does good. And when you perform judgment upon me, I will sing, blessed be the true judge. In either case, to you, O Lord, I will sing. And they also said, a man is under duty to bless God on the bad, just like he is to bless God for the good. But one who does not trust in the Almighty boasts on the good, as is written, for the wicked boast of his heart's desire, and he becomes angry. On the bad is written, and the one who passes therein shall suffer hardship and hunger, and it shall come to pass that when he shall be hungry, he shall be enraged, and curses his king and his idolatrous God, and he will turn to heaven. 2, one who trusts in the Almighty has tranquility of spirit and a heart of ease regarding bad decrees, knowing that the Creator will arrange them for what is his good in this world and next. As King David said, my soul, wait you only on God, for my expectation is from him. But one who does not trust in God, even when he is prosperous, is always pained and in a state of continual anxiety, He is sad and grieving because he is little satisfied with his situation and yearns to augment, increase, and hoard it, and likewise in bad times because he is disgusted by it and is contrary to his desire, nature, and traits. So too the wise man said, all the days of the poor are evil. One who trusts in God, even while he is engaging in the means of earning a livelihood, his heart will not rely on the means, and he will not hope to receive profit or loss from them unless it is the will of God. Rather, he engages in them as part of his service to God, who commanded us to occupy ourselves with this world, to maintain it and make it more habitable. If these means will yield him profit or help him avoid a loss, he will thank God alone for this. And he will not love and cherish the means more than this, nor will he rely more on them on account of this. Rather, his trust in God will be strengthened. He will come to rely on him and not on the means. And if the means does not yield specific benefit, he knows that his livelihood will come to him when God wants and through whatever way he wants. Therefore, he will not reject the means because of this, nor abandon employing them. He thus will serve his creator. But one who does not trust in God engages in certain means because he places his trust in them, confident that they will yield him a profit and protect him against loss. If they yield a profit, he will praise them and himself for the exerting in them and choosing them, and he will not try other means. But if they do not yield a profit, he will abandon them and reject them and lose interest in them, as written. Therefore, he sacrifices to his net, and he burns incense to his trawl, for through them he lives in luxury and enjoys the choicest food. 4. One who trusts in God, if he has more money than he needs, he will spend it in a way that pleases the Creator, like charity, with a generous spirit and a good heart. Is written, everything is yours, and from your hand we have given you. But one who does not trust in God does not regard the entire world and everything in it as enough for his maintenance and sufficient for his needs. He is more concerned with saving his money than fulfilling his obligations to the Creator and his fellow men, and he won't feel anything until all of his money is lost and he is left destitute. As the wise man said, there is one that scatters and yet increases, and there is one that will hold more than is right but leads to poverty. 5. One who trusts in God, engaging in a means of livelihood in order to also prepare provisions for his ends and needs for his appointed home in the afterlife. Only means of livelihood which is clear to him that is a safe for fulfilling his Torah study and fulfilling his religious service will he engage in, but a livelihood which will bring any loss of Torah observance or misleading him to rebel against God he will not engage in, so as not to bring on himself spiritual sickness instead of healing. But one who does not trust in the Almighty, trusts in the means and relies on them, and he won't refrain himself from employing any of them. He will engage in good means as well as bad means, and he won't think about his final end. As the wise man said, the wise man fears and avoids evil. 6. The one who trusts in God is beloved by all classes of people, and they feel at ease with him because they feel secure that he will not harm them. As their hearts are at peace with regard to him, they are not afraid of him that he will take their wives or their money, and he is also not worried about them because he realizes that it is not in any created being's power or control to benefit or harm him. Therefore, he does not fear harm from them, nor expects any benefit from them. And since he is assured from them, and they are assured from him, he will love them, and they will love him. As written, he who trusts in God will be surrounded by kindness. But he who does not trust in God, he has no true friend, because he is always coveting others and jealous of them, and he thinks that any good that reaches others is a loss to him, and that their livelihood is taken from his own, and preventing or attaining his desires is caused by them, and that others are capable of helping him to obtain his desires. And if some harm comes to his money or his children, he will think they caused it, and they are capable of removing the harm and the problems from him. And since his thinking is based on these principles, he will come to despise them, slander them, curse them, and hate them. And he is the disgusting one in both worlds, regarded as a disgrace in both abodes. It is written, a crooked heart will find no good. 7. The one who trusts in God will not mourn if his requests are denied, or if he loses something he loves. He will not hoard possessions, nor be troubled by more than his day's needs. He will not worry about what will be tomorrow, since he does not know when his end will come. He therefore trusts in God to prolong his days and provide his substance in need. during this time. He neither rejoices nor grieves about the future. As written, do not delight in tomorrow, because you don't know what today could bring. As Ben Sira said, do not anguish about the troubles of tomorrow, because one does not know what today could bring. Perhaps tomorrow he will be no more, and he is anguished on a world that is not his. Rather, his worry and mourning is on his lacking and the fulfillment of his obligation to God, and he tries to make up as much as he can of them, of his external and internal duties, because he thinks of his death and the arrival of the day of the ingathering. The fear of death may come suddenly, increases the effort and zeal to prepare provisions for his end. He won't be concerned about preparing for this world, and this is what is said: repent one day before your death. They explained on this: repent today, perhaps you will die tomorrow. Therefore, let all your days be in repentance. It is written, at all times let your clothing be clean. But one who does not trust in God mourns greatly the constant troubles of the world that befall him, that his wishes and things he loves are taken away or denied from him. He tries to amass much wealth of this world as if he were assured from passing on, and the fear of death has left him, as if his days are unlimited and his life will never end. He does not consider his end, occupied only with this world, unconcerned about religious matters, making no provision for the hereafter and his eternal abode. His trust in prolonging his days in this world is a cause for his perpetual desire for his worldly affairs, and for his little desire in matters of his final end. When the preacher rebukes him, the teacher instructs him and says, how long will you avoid thinking about the preparing provisions for your final journey and for the matters of your eternal abode? He will answer, when I will have enough money in my needs and for the needs of my wife and children until the end of our days, then I will have peace of mind for my worries of this world, and I will take time to pay my debts to the Creator, and will think about preparing provisions for my final end. These are really extremely profound. These, this is the essential wisdom. How to look at life, how to have trust in God, how to view our interactions with the world and earning a livelihood and other people, friends and enemies and classes below and above us. Yeah, powerful. Just these words leaving my mouth, purifying effect on me. I hope anybody's watching this will also have a purifying effect on them. Chapter 6. I saw proper to expose the foolishness and error in the ways of thinking in 7 ways. I will reveal the greatness of their mistake, and out of words prolong. This is because there is much to shame and rebuke proponents of this outlook. They are a class of security pledge seekers, similar in their practice to merchants who sell goods on credit to someone he does not trust. He will demand a security pledge at the time of sale because he minimally trusts his clients or fears the client will not be able to pay him. Number 1, first of the possible ways to answer him, we tell him, you, the man who doubt the decree of the Creator and to doubt the Almighty's power, you who light of the intellect has obscured, whose candle of understanding is extinguished due to being overwhelmed by the darkness of material desires, you deem proper to seek a security pledge for a client who has no dominion over you and cannot give you orders. However, for a worker who seeks to be hired by an employer, it is not proper for him to seek a security pledge of his wages before he starts to work. All the more so, it is not proper for a slave to seek a security pledge of his food from his master before working for him, and even the more so for a created being to seek a pledge from his Creator before fulfillment of the service he owes him. It is a wonder for a slave to undertake service of his master with a precondition that the master pay him wage after his service is completed would be regarded as a disgrace. As the sages said, be not like the servants who serve their master on condition to receive reward, but rather like the servants who serve their master even without condition of receiving reward. And how much more so if he were so brazen as to demand a pledge for his maintenance from his master before he even starts working. Or similar to this is written, is this how you repay the Lord, you disgraceful, unwise people? Is he not your father that acquired you? Has he not made you and established you? 2, one who takes a security pledge from a client receives a definite amount and his request is limited. But for the proponent of this thinking, there is no end to what he seeks, because he does not know how much money will suffice for him and his family's needs and the luxuries for the rest of their lives, And even if he obtained money many times his needs, he would not be at peace, because the time and their end is hidden, and the number of his days is not known, and he is foolish in what he seeks, because there is no end by him and no measure. 3. One who seeks a security pledge from his fellow only seeks so if there is no previous debts that he owes the fellow, and the fellow has no claims against him. Only then he is justified to request a pledge. But if he has outstanding debts to the fellow and knows that the fellow has legitimate claims against him, he has no business whatsoever in seeking a pledge, and it is not proper for him to accept it, even if the fellow volunteer the pledge. All the more so for the Creator, who has such legitimate claims on man, so that if the service of all human beings who ever lived could be accumulated and credited to a single man, their total would not be sufficient return to cover the great debt of gratitude that a man owes for even one of the benefits the Creator bestowed on him. And how can this brazen-faced person not be ashamed to ask from the Creator big favors on top of the previous favors, thereby increasing his debt to them? And maybe he will not even be able to fulfill the service that he says he will do, because his days will have passed and his end will have come. One of the pious would say to him, "Gentlemen, it is conceivable that the Creator would demand payment today for the debts that are not due until tomorrow, and likewise would he demand payment today for debts that are not due until next year or many years from now." They answer, "How is it possible to claim from us payment for future debts when we don't even know if we will be living at the end of the time when the debt is incurred? Rather, we are only bound to perform a definite service for a definite time, and when the future comes, we will perform the service that is due then." He would answer them, "So to the Creator guarantees for every definite period its needed livelihood, and its return from this. You are indebted a great service, just as he does not demand from you the special service before its appointed time, so too you should feel ashamed and ask for income before the time for it has arrived. Why do I see you seeking from him income in several years in the future, when you don't even know if you will live to reach those days? Furthermore, you ask him to provide you with maintenance for a wife and children, which you don't even have yet. You are not satisfied with the livelihood provided in the present, and you seek to prepare money for needs and luxuries for future times that you are uncertain to reach and that you are not assured. And not only do you not render to him service for the benefits you will receive in the futures, but you do not even make accounting with yourself for the service to him for which you have neglected to do in the past, during which God has not neglected to provide you for your livelihood in full. One who takes a security pledge from his fellows does so for one of 3 reasons. 1, maybe the fellow will become poor and won't be able to repay him. 2, maybe the fellow will close his hands, refuse to pay, and he may be able to collect payment for him. 3, in the case this fellow dies or won't be found, the security pledge is like a medicine against these ailments that occur between people. But if men were assured of each other against these 3 mishaps, it would certainly be disgraceful to demand a security pledge, and the Creator, for whom these 3 mishaps do not apply, how much more so is it a great disgrace to demand a security pledge for him, as Scripture has said, "Silver and gold is mine, and wealth and honor belong to you." Number 5, one who obtains a security pledge from his fellow will not be at peace with his pledge, because he expects to collect from it and to derive benefit from it or its monetary value. But one who thinks that if the Creator will advance him future provisions, he will have peace of mind regarding affairs of this world, his thinking is false and mistaken, because he cannot be sure the money will remain with him. It is possible that he will be struck by some mishap, that parts of his money will disappear. As written, in midlife he will lose it. And as for the claim that he will have peace of mind when he amasses wealth, this demonstrates that falsehood and foolishness on his part. On the contrary, this may well be the very cause that will cause him much mental pressure and anxiety. As the sages said, more possessions, more worries. Number 6, if one who takes a pledge of security from his fellow were certain that the fellow would pay him before the due time, and would out of pure kindness compensate him with the amount twice as much as were due for his waiting time, he would not seek a security pledge under any circumstance. Now the Creator, of who it is known to us his beneficent conduct towards us, and his great past and present favors to us, and that he rewards acts of righteousness and service of faith with reward that we cannot even imagine, is written, "No eye has ever seen, O God, besides yours, what he has prepared for those who wait to him." Certainly, it is a great disgrace to ask for a security pledge. And finally, number 7, one who takes a security pledge from his fellow is only justified in doing so if he is able to supply him with the merchandise purchase for which he takes pledge. But one who seeks a security pledge from the Creator and seeking advance favor is not capable of paying for them in services. He's not even certain of paying back what he owes from past deeds, all the more so for paying what he owes for future favors, because the righteous man cannot pay back the debt of gratitude of the Almighty on him except through the means of help which God renders him. And so one of the pious, in his praises of God, said, even the thinking person who has knowledge of you does not praise his own religious acts, but rather praises your name and mercy, for you have prepared his heart to know you. Through you, the people of Israel will be found worthy and be praised, saying, we praised with God all day long, and we will forever thank your name. Chapter 7, last chapter. Almost done. Since we have completed this gate to the best of our ability, a fitting amount of discussion on the themes of trust and how it is proper to clarify the things detrimental to trust in the Almighty, I say that the detrimental things mentioned in the 3 preceding gates of this book are likewise detrimental to trust in God. Additional things which cause the loss of trust. 1. Ignorance with regard to the Creator and his good attributes, because one who does not realize the Creator's mercy towards his creatures, his guidance, providence, and rule over them, and that they are bound by his chains under his total control, he will not be at peace and will not rely on him. 2. Another, ignorance in the Creator's commandments, namely his Torah, where he instructed us in it to rely on him and trust him, and is written, test me in this, and trust in God forever. Another detriment in trust is to tend to rely on the means which one can see without realizing that the nearer the causes are to the one affected by them, the less ability they have to help or harm him, and the further up they are, the stronger and more power it has to help or harm him. As an illustration, when a king decides to punish one of his servants, he commands his prime minister to take care of it, as the prime minister orders his chief of police, and the chief of police orders the sergeant, and the sergeant orders his officers, and the officers orders the policeman, and the policeman inflicts the punishment with the instruments he has. The instruments have the least capacity of all of them to reduce or increase his suffering because they have no free will on their own. The policeman has greater capacity than the instruments. Likewise, the officer has greater capacity than the policeman, and the sergeant than the officer, and the chief of police than the sergeant, and the prime minister than the chief of police, and the king more than all of them, because if he wants, he can pardon the man. As you can see, the weakness and strength of the agent to afflict the person are according to the remoteness from him or nearness to him. And the exalted Creator, who is the first cause and infinitely remote from those affected by him, is the one who is proper to trust and rely on because it is infinite power to help or harm, as we explained. The general principle in the matter of trust is that the degree of trust among those who trust in God increases according to the amount of knowledge of God, faith in his protection of them, and his abundant providence to promote what is for their good. 10 levels of trust. An infant at the beginning of his existence trusts in his mother's breast, as written, for you drew me from the womb, you made me trust on my mother's breasts. 2. When the perception strengthened, he trust moves to his mother's due to the great care she gives him, as written, I swear that I calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with his mother. 3. When his understanding grows and he observes that his mother depends on his father, he moves to trust to his father due to the greater degree of protection he receives from him. 4. When his body strengthens and it becomes possible for him to earn for himself a livelihood through work or business or the like, he moves from trust in his strength and resourcefulness due to his ignorance that all the good that came before this was through the providence of God. It is said of one of the pious whose neighbor was a swift scribe and earned his livelihood through his scribal skills. One day he inquired of the scribe, how are things? He was scribe, good as long as my hand is still in good shape. Then in the evening his hand was crushed and he could not write with it for the rest of his life. This was his punishment from God, in that he placed his trust in his hand. 5. If his livelihood comes through one of his fellow human beings, he will transfer his trust to them and rely on them. 6. But when his wisdom grows and he realizes they're lacking their need for the Creator, he will then move his trust to God and rely on him for things beyond his own control, in which he cannot escape submitting to the decree of God, such as falling of rainwater on the crops, or safely traveling through the sea, or crossing a barren desert, floods, outbreak of plagues among the living, or the like among matters which human beings have no plan whatsoever, is written, in the time of their trouble they require to God arise and save us. 7. If his knowledge of God strengthens more, he will put his trust in God in matters where he has some plan, such as avoiding earning a livelihood through dangerous means or exhausting occupations that wear down the body, and trust in God that he will provide for him through a lighter occupation. 8. If his knowledge of God strengthens more, he will put his trust in God in all the means, whether difficult or easy, and while occupied in them, his intent will be directed to serve God and guard his commandments. 9. If his knowledge of God strengthens more regarding his mercy on the created beings, he will accept with his heart and mind, outwardly and inwardly, the decrees of God. He will rejoice in them, whatever God does to him, be it death or life, poverty or wealth, health or sickness. He will not desire other than what God has chosen for him, and his desire only what God has chosen for him. He will give himself over to God and surrender his body and soul over to his judgment. He will not prefer one matter over the other, and will not choose anything over other than his current situation. As one who trusts in God said, I never resolved to do a thing and desired something else. 10. When his knowledge of God strengthens more than this, he understands the true intent why he was created and brought into this fleeting world, and he recognizes the exaltedness of the eternal next world, he will think lightly of this world and its means. With mind, soul, and body, he will flee from this world and surrender himself to the blessed Almighty, and delight in remembering him in solitude. He will feel desolate when he is not meditating on his greatness. If he is among a crowd of people, he will long for nothing else than to do his will. He will yearn only to come near him. His joy in his life will distract him from the pleasures worldly people have for this world, and even from the joys of souls in the next world. This is the highest of all levels of those who trust in God, reached by the prophets, pious ones, and treasured pure men of God. And this is what the verse says, referring, even the way of your judgments, O Lord, have we hoped for you, for your name, and for your remembrance is the desire of our soul directed. And my soul thirsts for the Almighty, the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? These are the 10 levels of trust, which one cannot escape belonging to one of them. We find the matter of trust in Scripture expressed in 10 synonyms corresponding to the 10 levels. They are trust, support, hope, protection, waiting, expecting, reliance, resting, confidence, assurance. May God place us among those who trust in him, who give themselves over to his judgment outwardly and inwardly in his mercy. Amen. The gate of trust is complete. To God, the last and the first. Awesome. As I said, I committed large parts of this to memory in my youth. I've lived by this wisdom most of my adult life. Very glad that I was revealed this wisdom in my early adult years, and decided to take it upon myself to try to live by it. And just coming back to this years later, even though I committed large parts of it to memory, this is deep. It was worthy of return, and I see that most of these levels I still haven't came close to, and I'm glad to review it. These words are really penetrating my heart. Hope they're having a benefit on other people, and just the words leaving my mouth has a purifying effect, and I'm sure there'll be a purifying effect on anybody else who is listening. And God bless everybody. We trust in our common maker, and you have reward in this world and the next, and be able to serve our maker and not have the impotence and the problems of livelihood and sickness and family and friends and foes. And hopefully I trust in God I'll merit to find the right woman and have my own children to teach this wisdom to. But in the meantime, I'm fulfilling my duty to teach my children by putting this out on the internet. God bless everybody. Hope they gain from it. Hope this wisdom penetrates our heart, and we'll continue with more